What's going on, everybody? It is Sam Minton from the Blazing Musket, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Jaime Macias, who will be calling the game versus Charlotte FC this weekend. Jaime, how are you doing today?
How you doing? Pleasure talking to you as always and trying to talk a little bit about soccer.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, actually, I do kind of want to talk about something off the pitch. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, so obviously, with it being the month, just what does the month mean to you, and what has it been like, kind of being able to represent the Hispanic audience, obviously calling the Spanish calls of MLS games?
Well, it's pretty special that there's like a date to celebrate it, and I think just when we have a specific date is more in the context of remembering and getting together, right? Than the actual date meaning something. But when you start hearing the stories of other Spanish speaking people that have come here to the US, we have a lot of things in common that we sometimes don't sit down and think about, right? We had a transition. When we see back, it was a good transition, but at some point there was uncertainty on how things were gonna uh, happen, right? So I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to share their story.
Yeah, and now obviously just kind of getting back to the soccer, it's been a tale of two seasons for New England Revolution, especially just with all the turmoil and kind of internal workings with the resignation of Bruce Arena. So, kind of from the outside looking in, just what are your overall impressions of the club so far this season?
Look, I was putting New England as one of the candidates because I really like the market they had, and this was before Petrovic left. Like I called back to back the Atlanta and DC games, which were the two games before League's Cup, right? And the team was looking pretty strong. I really like the Ian Hark signing and Mark Anthony Kay. Both of those signings, I think that was tremendous for New England. And then a lot of changes happened, right? Petrovic has been a key goalkeeper on the league. I believe that correct me if I'm wrong. I think that they haven't won without Petrovic. I think Earl haven't won a game. Oh, I think he won the New York Red Bulls game, just
Yeah.
that one, right? So and nothing to do with him. It's just like a pure coincidence on the team not being able to win without Petrovic, and um, then Brandon Bay getting injured and not having like a natural replacement. So those are two things that on terms of the squad makes things look a little bit different. Probably you're thinking on Bo, but I think that Bo is more replaceable, even though he's an amazing player. But because of how many players you have in that part of the field, you can find a replacement for him. Probably not his quality, but you can find a replacement. And then you had a manager that had won uh, trophies with almost all their teams, including New England, and that was getting to the part of the season where he can make a difference. So uh, it's very hard to transition to a new manager where when soccer wise things have been going good, and part of like the biggest challenge with Clint is what does he do, right? Because usually when you jump into a job, it's because things are going bad, so you can immediately intervene and start taking decisions and start molding the team your way, right? But in this case, soccer wise, the thing it's functioning, the thing is working, right? So it's very delicate to move things until you need to, but you also don't want to get to that point because probably when you need to do it, it's a little bit too late. So it's like a tough spot for him.
Yeah, and it's been kind of interesting. You kind of touch upon him being able to make changes. In the last game, we did see some changes, formation wise and tactically. We saw Matt Polster go to left back, and then when in attack, he kind of shifted into the midfield. So it kind of has been interesting, seeing his imprint on the squad. But, getting to the other side, obviously going up against Charlotte FC, haven't had the best season, but, they have had some good play up top of Karol Swiderski, Enzo Capati. So just what have you seen from Charlotte so far?
Um, I think that Atancio on the board is great. And but sometimes I feel that his squad does not have the quality to do everything he's asking them to do. So when the plan works, And he likes playing like one-on-ones, a lot of one-on-one on that kind of situation, right? So when your plan works, your team goes forward, right? But then you try to do that against Cincinnati, for example, or against this version of Inter Miami, and you are completely exposed. So I think that Charlotte have give us great highlight moments during the season. Probably they play better than what their standings show, but when you play something similar, or when you play hand in hand to a team that has more quality, the most possible outcome is that you lose, right? Because we're trying to do the same but better, but our squad is weaker, right? So that's for me. Like I would say, there's a big difference between tactics and a strategic and a strategy. Sorry, right? Tactics is how I want my team to move on the pitch, and when I think about tactics, I'm not thinking about the opponent. I'm thinking about my team, my squad, my quality, right? My weapons. And when I'm thinking about strategy, it's how with that I'm going to overcome the opponent team. And I think that that's where Charlotte sometimes it's lacking, and that's why Charlotte's so inconsistent. And when they don't have a good day, they're completely erased from the field. Like that's why Charlotte's the team that has conceded the most goals during MLS. Is because when they're not in the game, they're completely erased from the pitch.
Yeah, and obviously, you kind of mentioned, maybe Latancio not just having the talent to implement, his system. So where do you think New England kind of pick apart and, really kind of break down Charlotte when it comes to the match on Saturday?
I have like, I'm still curious on is the three at the back was something that Clint used in Chicago coming from the defeat in Colorado, or is something that we're gonna see again, right? So kind of like the whole midfield, like Polster, Mark Anthony Kay with Carlos on top area is with New England with the four at the back. It's extremely powerful. Why? Because with the deep fullbacks, those guys have 4 to 5 offensive passing options, right? What he's trying to do with three at the back is without Brandon By and without a deep right fullback, trying to have that same number of offensive players, sacrificing a midfielder to put a center back. So the wingers can be in more that offensive position, and that's where I think that New England is going to be strong, like making the field wide. Because when you're a three at the back team and you're playing a 4-3-3, which is what usually Charlotte uses, because like you see the names and it looks like it's a 4-2-3-1, but Siderski falls very Siderski? No, just he falls a little bit deeper, right? So if you are able to do 5 versus 3 in that line, there's where you're gonna make the difference, and that's when the other team is gonna be running towards a goal to defend and being out of position. And even though I know Clint it's a possession driven coach, what you have to look on teams that are possession driven, it's how much they suffer when they're not in possession, right? Because in possession they're going to be good, and I think that's one of the strengths of New England. They don't suffer that much when they're out of possession as Charlotte does. I think that Charlotte suffers a lot when they are out of possession.
Yeah, and obviously, New England has had some acquisitions kind of come in. Thomas Vaslik still working with the squad, and Tomas Chancalay has been able to kind of make an impact early on, specifically on Chancalay. Just what do you see about his game that kind of makes him impactful, and just what are your impressions on his start with New England so far?
It really surprised me because I call a lot of Chancalay games when he was playing. I used to call Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericana, so I call him in Colón and I call him in Racing, and I haven't seen him with the freedom he had in New England, right? I knew he was great. He's great passing. I knew he can go 1v1s, right? But because when he was in Cologne was a very defensive team with a classic number 9, so everybody was like behind Rodriguez, who was their number 9, and then in Racing was very positional, right? So it was more him moving from outside to the inside and creating chances than having this freedom of the long runs we've seen, like the goal he scored Chicago was, where he scored a goal from a long run. Like that's a version of him that I haven't seen before because of where he was playing and what the managers asked for him. So apart from that being good, it also shows you all he has under his sleeves, right? Because he's coming to do something different, and I think that that's a big asset. And with your fullbacks not in the best form, having a guy that play in the midfield and can do those runs, it's very, very important.
Yeah, and it's kind of been interesting, tactically kind of looking at how the Revolution have played. They had great fullback play with DeJuan Jones, and they still have, and then also too Brandon Bye. And it seems like recently Giacomo Vrioni has kind of struggled to kind of find his form and struggled to find the back of the net. Overall, just what do you think might be the key to unlocking him and maybe potentially even getting a goal or two against Charlotte on a Saturday?
You're talking about Vrioni?
Vrioni, yeah.
Yeah, the this is probably more a philosophical situation, and I will love to hear your take on this one. In South America, we have been used to play with number 10s. Usually, we're super used on playing with number 10s, right? Even though when our players go to Europe, they don't play with a number 10, but it's a very common way of developing on your career. Nobody in European youth systems plays with a number 10, right? They play with 3 at front or with like false number 9 and different positions. And I sometimes feel that Vrioni struggled to play with a guy directly behind him as a playmaker, as a number 10, right? So and if you see Brioni's goals or Brioni appearances on goals, is usually more on the guys that are on his sides, or he going to the flank to assist Bo, or even like, for example, Chicago, like he assisted Carlos Hill, but Carlos was not appearing in a number 10 position. He was appearing like a second striker position when he shot that goal that is deflected. So I think that has a lot to do with that. Like, he's a great striker for sure. He's a great striker. We have seen his quality. Is playing with a 10 behind him the best that can happen to him? I'm not sure. I have doubts, right? That's how they have to play, and the team is getting goals on net. Well, they have to figure out the way, but probably it's more like a philosophical context answer, the one I'm giving you, than an exact answer of what you're asking me.
No, it's perfect, and it's been really interesting because there's these interesting stats where it's been quite some time since he scored, but also he struggled on the road, so there's that factor as well too. And obviously, when you look at players from Europe coming to MLS, the travel's a lot more comparably. And it's just been interesting too, like you mentioned, kind of number 10. New England traditionally, they've really utilized those fullbacks to provide service. And if you look back to an Adam Buksa, for example, he was lethal in the air. And now it seems like that's an area of Vrioni's game where he's going to have to continue to work on. Obviously, he's able to kind of make those looping runs and get in behind the back line. But to be that kind of, I guess, traditional number 9, being physical, hold up play, it seems like he needs to work on that. So it will be interesting to see how new.
I think that, for example, if you ask me from the outside, and we're not talking about New England and all the other 10 players, right? What will be the perfect position for him? I think he will be perfect for a number 9 in a 4-3-3, because that number 9 in the 4-3-3, in paper, he's playing on the same line of the wingers.
Yeah.
But a lot of times he's playing a little bit behind. So those runs that come from the wing have him clear towards goal, right? So it's more an opportunistic and an anticipation game than the physical Buxa game, like, because Buxa like to play close to the defenders, right? Buxa, Copetti, like I'm trying to think to other names, but that Benteke, Urra, those guys, they like playing close to the defender. They like knowing where the defender are and take advantage of that positions. And then we got like the Ruidías, the Chicho Arangos, and the Brionis. They don't like playing closer to the defender. They like to get a little bit of a gap to surprise. And by having a number 10 behind him, he sometimes is forced to play closer to the center back. That's what he likes. So, but at the end, it's an adaptation game. You gotta adapt to everything.
It's the $1 million question, and I can tell you, Revolution fans are definitely trying to see just what's the thing that's going to unlock him. But to kind of get back to the game on Saturday, no, it might be a bit cliche, but if you could give me what's the key for Charlotte if they want to, somehow find a win, and what's the key for New England to secure 3 points?
For me, the key for Charlotte, and that's why Charlotte have struggled the most. Charlotte to win needs to dominate the game from start to end. They need to dominate possession. They need to be able to recover far away from Kalina's goal. Like what happened with Charlotte is Charlotte is not able to win games if they don't dominate the game completely, and that's a struggle because no team in any league can dominate all the games of the whole season. So I think that's one of the things that Charlotte can show us. And like their last win, I think, was LAFC, and they dominated LAFC that day. But no team is able to repeat those performances week in and without. So, and the key for New England is the opposite: is be in the game, stay in the game, disconnect Charlotte, don't let them go into rhythm, because New England have the tools. And one thing that I like about New England is that New England can win games by pushing the line and playing close to the opponent goals. But they are also a great team in transition. Like we've seen amazing goals from New England that start with the center backs close to their goalkeeper and be able to attack in transition. So I think that's kind of, for me, the biggest strength of New England and any team. A team that has different ways of winning, it's a team that is dangerous, like, because they're gonna find a way. And the other thing is, like, apart from soccer, I think like a lot of noise had been around the team in the last month, and I think that finally, like, the focus is gonna be back on the pitch. It had been back on the pitch, and we're gonna see if what I think from the outside it's true, and that's reflected in the game.
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting just with all the events of the last month. I believe this is their first home game since the resignation of Bruce Arena. So it will be an interesting experience to see. And obviously, I know there's the Karol Swiderskis, there's the Enzo Capettis, but just what's a player from Charlotte that really stands out? It might be someone that Revolution fans might want to keep an eye on.
I don't know if he's playing, right, but I think Westwood is a good player. I believe he played with, and if you can check, I believe he played with Carlos and Aston Villa.
I'll check while you talk about him.
I think they played together in Aston Villa, so I think he's a good asset on the team. He's not a fast player. He's very fast with his, like, he's not physically fast. He's mentally fast. And that's why he needs all the other pieces to be at his mental speed to be in position for that recovery and transition. But I think that when you have a team that has these little details, like Ashley Westwood, I think it's an important player for them.
Yeah, and I believe, yeah, they did. So it's always interesting seeing that Aston Villa connection. It's very funny, at least to me, that randomly in Carlos Hill's like Instagram comments, you'll just see Jack Grealish just randomly commenting on it. So it has been interesting to see him cross paths with fellow players from the EPL. But Jaime, just kind of wrapping up, looking ahead. Obviously, the Revolution have clinched a playoff spot. just how far do you think this team can go? Obviously, they do have an interim head coach, but do you think they could possibly make a run for an MLS Cup?
They can. There are certain things in the East that certain things are uncertain. You like that combination of words, but somebody, and I'm not gonna say somebody, I'm gonna say two teams that deserve to be in the top four are not gonna be in the top four, right? Because of how tight everything is. Like, I think that if we have to bet, like, we will say that Cincinnati is gonna win Supporter Shield. I don't know if you agree with that one. We cannot predict the order from Orlando to Atlanta. I'm 100% sure Nashville is gonna be 7th. And the other two are open. I think it's gonna be New York City and Miami, but that's why open. But what I mean is 2nd to 6th is unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that two of those teams are not gonna have that home field advantage. So that's a big if, right? Because any team that is there and does not go through that round was probably a team that could make a run for the playoff. I don't think that New England is in my top 4 of candidates, but it's a team that I don't have it like outside of the question. It's not like a team I have it like no way, right? Because I have my top 4, and then probably those teams end up matched between them, and they're going to eliminate by them. And we've seen that happen a lot of times here in MLS. So I think that you cannot count them out, especially because I think that when you see the squad, we don't know how Clint is as a manager of a first team squad. That's a question we don't have the answer. We're not going to judge it. But when you see the squad, you have young players, you have big leaders, you have great captains, and you have players that have been in a lot of battles and know how this goes. So that's why I'm not counting them out.
Yeah, it kind of has been interesting because we've gotten to learn a little bit from the players. It seems like he's taking a really collaborative approach, especially kind of with tactical changes. He's kind of brought it to the players. They've worked it out in training and been like, all right, we think this can work. So it has been interesting to kind of see him, interact now with the first team. But like you mentioned, Eastern Conference is extremely packed, and I think Revolution fans are acutely aware that anything can happen in the MLS Cup playoffs. You saw in 2020 a team that really struggled at times, was without Carlos Gil, was able to make a run, but then in 2021 you win the Supporter Shield and then you're out immediately to NYCFC. So definitely.
Yeah, but that's for me the perfect scenario, right? That year we got a team that got hot in playoff and they won the league. And they were not. Nobody had New York City at that time, right?
Yeah.
And now we probably don't have New England in our top 4, but if New England gets hot at the end of at the beginning of the playoff or during the playoffs, you cannot count them out. And something that for me is very interesting, like you can replace talent, but you cannot replace leadership. And if there is something that New England haven't lost, is their big leaders. Carlos still there, Farrell's still there, Omar Gonzalez is there. He just came, but he's there. So Bo is still there. So you have these big leaders of the dressing room, but leaders on the field too. And I think that we can spot teams that have more talent than New England, probably, but there are just few of them that we can say like they have more leadership and on the field.
Perfect. Well, Jaime, once again, thank you so much for taking the time. Definitely, everyone, make sure to check out his Call of Saturday's game and the rest of the MLS season on MLS Season Pass. But once again, thank you so much, Jaime.
Anytime, my friend. Happy to talk to you.